Alright, this is News 14 Carolina meteorologist Matthew East. I wanted to put up a quick discussion here about Irene. Irene is going to be the big weather story this week. And this is a look at the radar image from Puerto Rico at about 11 o'clock. Actually, I guess it was a little bit before that, about 10:15 or so on Sunday evening as Irene was approaching Puerto Rico, and the eye feature on Irene was beginning to tighten up, or at least the center of circulation of Irene was tightening up just a bit. It was strengthening, and as of the 11 p.m. advisory on Sunday evening, Irene was just below hurricane threshold with maximum sustained winds of 70 miles per hour. Irene just on the cusp of hurricane intensity at the time I'm cutting this video. The satellite imagery looking more and more impressive with time here. A lot of that deep convection, and notice it's a pretty symmetric looking system, at least no shear evident from this satellite image. A lot of good outflow all around Irene. Now let's talk about Irene's future. There's the spaghetti charts here, and most of the modeling has been shifting to the right just a bit over the past several cycles, and we had a big redevelopment Saturday night of the center of Irene to the north by 75 or 100 miles, and that plays a big role down the road too as far as the future track of Irene. One big key will be how much Irene interacts with Hispaniola. If it just kind of grazes Hispaniola or even stays north of it, then it would obviously remain much stronger. But if it moves right over the interior of Hispaniola, hits those 10,000 plus foot mountains, that's going to really tear the system apart, or at least greatly weaken it. So that's going to be a big question to answer over the next several days. In terms of the overall steering of Irene, you have a big ridge back here over the Rocky Mountain region to the plains. It's a tropical ridge out here in the Atlantic Ocean, and with the trough carving itself out here near the Great Lakes in the northeast, there is a weakness between those two ridges right there. And that is what is going to allow Irene to gradually curve up to the north. And exactly the speed or the timing of which that northward turn occurs, that'll mean all the difference in the world as to where this eventually winds up making a landfall, assuming it does, along the U.S. coast. So let me show you some of the latest model guidance when I'm cutting this video. This is the European model. This is valid at 8 a.m. Saturday. That's a landfall on the lower South Carolina coast of a very significant hurricane. The European ensemble, pretty good agreement. Timing is a little slower, but not bad for an ensemble mean there. Let's go to the GFS. Very, very similar to the European. This is at 1 a.m. Saturday. Again, that's a powerful hurricane hitting the lower South Carolina coast. The GFS ensemble, also pretty good agreement with that overall scenario. Okay, now this is kind of interesting. This is the Canadian operational run, and it's really the furthest east model. It takes us up toward the Outer Banks, but its own ensemble is way west over interior Florida at 8 a.m. Friday morning. So that's interesting. A couple of the other models here. This is going to be the GFDL. It is the furthest west model, and it's in the Gulf of Mexico. But it is about it in the UK Met, about the only models in the Gulf of Mexico. I think that is the least likely scenario right now, that being the Gulf of Mexico type of deal. And I think probably you're looking at Florida being the furthest west this can get, and I mean the Atlantic coast or interior Florida, not the Gulf of Mexico part of Florida. Okay, here is the experimental hurricane warf, and it scrapes Irene up the Florida coast. It's a pretty significant hurricane. The other hurricane warf model, the standard hurricane warf model, takes this right at the South Carolina coast as a formidable hurricane. And one more, finally, this is the no-gaps model, and this takes it to the South Carolina coast out at 144 hours. As a very significant hurricane. So with all that said, there's the National Hurricane Center forecast track as of the 11 o'clock advisory, and they are still on the western side of the guidance envelope with this track, but they've nudged it east just a bit, and they're going with the overall idea. Well, again, you don't want to focus on specific points, but if you plot the specific center point forecast, it's right along the Florida coast, but you have to consider the entire cone of uncertainty. Now it is way, way early, and again, you're dealing with exactly when this turn to the right, and that meaning the north, might occur. But I'm leaning right now towards somewhere in this corridor being the most likely landfall spot. If you want to give specific points, maybe Jacksonville to Wilmington, but it could certainly be further south on the Florida coast and maybe even in South Florida. Just depends on when that turn occurs. It's possible that the trough is a little stronger, the weakness is a little more pronounced, and this heads over maybe more toward the Outer Banks. That is a possibility too. But if you pin me down right now, I would say somewhere in that corridor is the most likely landfall spot. Intensity is a very tricky proposition. If it can avoid it getting really torn apart by Hispaniola, or the water around the Bahamas and then over the Gulf Stream is exceedingly warm, and this could just take off in intensity. There's not a lot of shear going to affect this system at all, and it seems like systems always, when they begin to turn to the north, they get a little lopsided and less powerful looking overall, and of course there are some exceptions to that, but either way I think the overall atmospheric and oceanic conditions will be pretty favorable for some strengthening if this cannot get torn apart by Hispaniola. So it's going to be interesting to watch for sure. All interests from the coast of Florida, and just to be safe, we'll say the Gulf Coast of Florida all the way around to the North Carolina Outer Banks. Need to very, very closely monitor Irene's progress as we go through the next 5 to 6 days. Okay, that is it for this special edition of the Carolina Weather Video. I'm meteorologist Matthew East. Have a great week, and God bless.